Hi everyone, it's Paul Driscoll here, aka The Drisk, and today I wanted to cover a great horizontal shoot-'em-up called Einhänder by Square and released on the PlayStation. Yes, you were right, you heard me, by Square, that well-known expert at producing RPGs like Final Fantasy series, and they release a shooter. And what is perhaps surprising is really how impressive and good this shooter is. Released only in Japan in November 1997 and then the US in May 1998. Us Europeans sadly never got to see the release, which is crazy considering how well this game would have done here. Not to mention the name of the game is a German name, meaning one-handed sword, and all the speech in the game is German as well. Because of it not being released here in Europe, many people will have missed this gem over here, and I hope this video will introduce people to the game and hopefully encourage them to try it. To buy the game is about £40 for a US version or £20 on eBay, but of course you'll need some way to play the import game. Alternatively, the game does emulate pretty well. The game is set in the distant future, where a colony has been set up on the moon, with people who call themselves the Selene, named after the Greek goddess of the moon. They want independence from Earth, and a bloody battle is fought between the Earth and Moon colony. This results in heavy casualties on both sides, and so they go off to lick their wounds. With Earth becoming a German-controlled totalitarian military planet, and the Moon colony desperate for resources, the Moon attack Earth again in a second bloody battle. The Moon Selene people produce during that battle the Einhänder program, a ship with a main gun maneuverable arm with a second weapon. You play as one of these pilots, trained as a kamikaze to fly to Earth and do as much damage as possible before you're destroyed. So basically the game is fly around, shoot everything in sight, and it's an amazing one at that. How Square managed to produce such a beautiful and technically impressive 2.5 dimension shooter, I will never know, but they do, and what's more, they've produced one of the most impressive horizontal shooters of all time. It really is in the top 10 of all time in my opinion. On release, the game did really well in Japan, with the game selling 50,000 copies in its first 3 days alone. And it would go on to sell 100,000 copies just in Japan throughout its entire print run. And it's easy to see why it sold so well, with stunning locales, memorable enemies and tough, jaw-dropping end-of-level bosses for you to learn and beat. And the action never relents, with your adrenaline pumping and senses dancing over the wonderful spectacle of this blaster. It really is an impressive showcase of what the PlayStation machine can do. Of course, the gameplay gimmick to this game is the secondary weapon arm. This means not only do you fire your unlimited forward laser on your main weapon, but you have a secondary weapon that you can pick up. And this has limited ammo, but can be much more destructive, and shoots either downwards, or you can reposition the arm to shoot it diagonally upwards. The game was designed by Yuji Asano, who went on to design stages for Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and he did the PSP version of Kingdom Hearts, Birth by Sleep game. Most recently he's worked as a planning director on Mario Party 9. On main programming duties we have Akira Suzuki, who's perhaps best known as the main programmer on the Simpson arcade game, but he also helped do the Sega Saturn ports of Fantasy Zone and Afterburner 2. He was accompanied on programming Tomokai Yoshiabu, but to be honest this was the only game I found that he actually worked on. Also of note is the fantastic music in the game by Kenichiro Fukuai, and he does a great techno-inspired soundtrack here. Now, Kenichiro has also worked on other famous games such as Sunset Riders, Lethal Enforcers, and gone on to work on Project Slipheed. He's also the person that arranged the music on recent Final Fantasy games like Final Fantasy XII and the 4 remake. So, onto the game itself. The game does have some negatives for me. I find the ship is a bit too slow and large, which means that sometimes it's unavoidable and you get hit simply because the controls weren't responsive as I would have liked. But it's by no means terrible, and only ever so slightly off. It really is still a brilliant shooter, and really must be played. But enough about what I thought about the game. What did the reviewers back in the day think about the game? Well, IGN gave the game 9 out of 10, saying side-scrolling shooters have been at the top of gamers' playlists since the release of the great games such as Garry's, Thunder Force and even Defender. But the launch of the PlayStation shooters sort of died off, and fighting games stole the spotlight. In an attempt to rekindle the flame, Square took a break from developing RPGs and focused its energy on a shooting game called Einhänder. Not only did Square rekindle the side-scrolling genre with Einhänder, but it has literally surpassed and set the standard. It is one of the best shooters I've ever played. GamePro gave the game 90% and said the foot-tapping techno music accompanying each stage perfectly, and the sound effects shine with a plethora of explosions and other sound of destruction. GameSpot gave the game 79% and said there's no denying that space shooter isn't what it used to be. The once thriving genre, championed by such classics as Gradius and Raiden, has boiled down to more of a nostalgic pastime. People just aren't jazzed about blowing away hordes of alien ships and racking up billions of points like before. While the occasional shooter still shows up every now and then, it seems like it would take a miracle for a company to produce one that would rejuvenate the genre and renew public interest. Leave it to Squaresoft to accept the challenge, and while the fruit of its efforts may not be the miracle this genre needs for a complete revival, it is just about as good as shooters get. So there you go, that's what the reviewers thought. All in all, it's a great shooter and a stunning showcase of what the PlayStation can do. So if you love your shooters, particularly horizontal shooters, then really track this down and give this game a go. You won't be disappointed. So, until next time, see you later.